Welcome to Talk+Water, the podcast associated with the Texas+Water newsletter, which provides timely information on the spectrum of Texas water issues, including science, policy, and law. Texas+Water is published jointly by the Meadows Center for Water and the Environment at Texas State University, the Texas Water Journal, and the Texas Water Resources Institute at Texas A&M University. You can sign up for Texas+Water by visiting texas+water.org/newsletter. My name is Todd Votteler. I'm the Editor-in-Chief of Texas+Water and the Texas Water Journal, as well as the host of Talk+Water. This is Podcast 11. My guest today is Jennifer Bowles. Jennifer is the Executive Director of the Water Education Foundation based in Sacramento, California. A veteran journalist, Jennifer directs the development of Western Water News, the Layperson's Guide series on key water topics, the Water Education Foundation's Colorado River Project, posters, maps, tours, and various workshops and conferences. She oversees the Water Leaders Program and leads fundraising, communication, social media efforts, all for the foundation. Much of her career, Jen has been an award-winning journalist who covered water issues across California and the West, along with renewable energy, endangered species, public lands, and other natural resource issues. Jen received her bachelor's degree in journalism and history from the University of Southern California and completed the year-long Ted Scripps Fellowship for Environmental Journalism at the University of Colorado Boulder, where she focused her studies on water and environmental law and policy. Welcome, Jen, and thank you for being part of Talk+Water.
Thanks for having me, Todd.
So, Jen, let's start out with your background in water. How did you first become involved with water issues?
Well, it sort of started out, I was a journalist working at the Associated Press in Los Angeles in essentially the 1990s, covering everything under the sun, from the LA riots to the O.J. Simpson trial to, even the deadly Northridge earthquake in 1994, just an array of hard news. I also covered the Oscars and the Emmy Awards and did interviews of celebrities because we were in LA. That's part of the news there, and also top music bands at the time. I actually did one of the rare interviews with Bob Dylan, but that's a whole other story.
Yeah, I'd like to hear it.
But to get to the point was, I had a great time. I loved working for Associated Press. I loved covering the variety of news issues that were out there. But I really wanted to start focusing on something that was super important to everyone. And really, there's nothing more important than the water we drink, the air we breathe, natural resource issues. So I applied to the Ted Scripps Fellowship for Environmental Journalism in Boulder, Colorado, and got accepted. And that is where I studied mainly at the law school, taking classes on natural resources law, water law, policy, those things of that nature. And I just got the water bug right then and there. I returned, after my year in Colorado, and actually had hiked to the headwaters of the Colorado River during that time as well. Just a side note. But I returned to Associated Press after my year in Colorado, and later took a job at the Press Enterprise, a newspaper in inland Southern California. And that's where I really started covering water issues in depth, and other natural resources issues. And so, it was really a kind of a regional reporting job, because water in California, it's not just local water, it's also the water that's coming from Northern California through the Delta. It's also the Colorado River that's feeding a lot of Southern Californians. So you end up covering all kinds of water issues, and also your local watershed as well, which at that time was the Santa Ana River watershed. So that's how I got really interested in water.
So, as a journalist covering water issues, I'm interested. Did you notice that this is something I've noticed, for example, in Texas, that the public's interest in articles on water, seems to be tied to droughts. When we're talking about people running out of water or some kind of pollution issue, and they're concerned about their safety. Have you noticed any of that?
That people that they're more interested when there's a drought?
Yes.
You mean? Yeah. Oh, yes, of course. We had that here in California just with our historic drought just a few years ago. People get more into it. They start tearing up their lawn and putting more natural plants there. The droughts are usually a good time to teach people about water and the scarcity of water in California and really a lot of the West.
So after a successful career as a journalist covering water issues, you made the transition to your current role as executive director of the Water Education Foundation. So,
right.
So I'm interested in how.
And my predecessor, Rita Sudman, was also a journalist. She was more of a TV journalist, radio journalist. I was more on the print side. But being a journalist is really key at the Water Education Foundation because it's a very much an impartial organization. It takes that role very seriously in California. We are essentially the Switzerland of the California water world, so we have to stay neutral in everything we do, whether it's news articles, tours, every program that we do. We have to make sure that we have all stakeholder perspectives in anything that we do. So we have to stay, and being a journalist, you have to stay impartial as well. So really, the mission of the foundation really spoke to me on that level. And one of our big programs is Western Water News, which used to be a print magazine dating back to the late 70s. And we made the decision a couple years ago, or actually at the beginning of 2018, to put it completely online. In my role as executive director, I'm also the executive editor of Western Water News, and so I'm constantly editing. And occasionally write a column also on that will be married with an in-depth article that we write, speaking some of the background about why we decided to do an in-depth article or what have you, some big water topic in California. So being a journalist was really helped me a lot, but however, it did not teach me to fundraise and how to keep a nonprofit moving along, but I somehow slipped pretty easily into that role. So it's been 5 years now that I've been at the foundation. So keeping it going strong.
Well, we hope so. So what were some of the challenges that, besides fundraising, that you encountered when you first took over your role as executive director, since that you was such a very different type of thing?
Right. Well, it's first of all, it's a nonprofit, and you're actually running it. It's like running a small business. So you're not just the executive editor of Western Water News. You're also the CFO, the CEO, the COO. So you play, chief operating officer, the chief financial officer, the HR, the human resources person. You're really running a small business, and so it's just learning to manage all those elements and keep programs going and making sure, the fundraising was coming in so we could keep everything going. I guess the other thing was, just managing big conferences and symposiums, something I had never really done. But even with those, when we have conferences on our panels, we try to have as many stakeholders as possible. So it always goes back to that impartiality theme at the foundation, and again back to that journalism theme of impartiality. So there was definitely a lot to learn, but it's a very satisfying mission to help carry out and to direct.
So why don't you tell us more specifically about the foundation and its programs?
Yeah, so the Water Education Foundation was founded in 1977 in the midst of a very bad drought, and the idea was to have an impartial organization to educate the public and policymakers about water. So that was back in 1977, and slowly over time we developed an array of programs and publications that address water education from K through 12 all the way to adults. So a lot of people, we have a variety of programs, including our water tours. Those are very public, very visible program that we do. We do about 6 to 8 water tours a year through key watersheds, such as the Delta here in California, the San Joaquin Valley, the Lower Colorado River. We have a Northern California tour that goes up to Shasta. That's pretty far north of Sacramento. And on every single tour that we do, you're visiting infrastructures, farmers' fields, wetlands, and habitat for species. You're hearing from those farmers. You're hearing from environmentalists. You're hearing from urban users and rural users. And, again, that kind of, all perspective viewpoint comes in on our tours as well. We're about to head out on our Edge of Drought tour. That's going to be along the coast in the Santa Barbara region. And, that area is a very water scarce region. And we're sort of using the tour to showcase projects that are aiming to stretch water supplies, whether it's through ocean desalination or groundwater recharge or what have you. We always try to teach lessons, no matter what program we're doing. So our tour program's a big one. In terms of other programs, we have Project WET, which is water education for teachers, and we coordinate about 50 workshops across California each year designed to help K through 12 teachers bring lessons on water science, conservation, supply, habitat into the classroom. So that's a great program. We already talked about Western Water as kind of one of our flagship news publication. We do really beautiful water maps. I don't know if you've had a chance to see those, but they're really beautiful on educational water maps. We have one of California. We have one of the Delta. We have one of the Colorado River. We actually have a groundwater map that shows the different aquifers in California and then explains the difference in water wells and things like that. We also do, we have layperson's guides on key water topics, and so groundwater, climate change, recycling, wastewater, I mean, the list goes on and on. And we have kept those guides in print for now, in the print format. We know when the college semester starts because we know some professors in California use them as textbooks, so we're happy about that. And we talked about conferences and workshops, and we also, one of our biggest and most popular programs in California is our Water Leaders program. And essentially that's a one-year program where we have about, give or take, 20 young engineers, lawyers, farmers, environmentalists, and other NGOs kind of stay with us for a year-long program. They study a topic in the water world. This year it's fire and water. And they have to come up with policy recommendations. They each get a mentor who's somebody, top policymaker in California, along those lines, that they use during the year. They come on our water tours. We make them take our Water 101 workshop. Anyways, it's super popular. We get way more applications than we can manage to come into the classroom. So that's a really, really great program that we do, and we're pretty well known for that program.
So I've got questions about most of those programs, and because I mean they're really fantastic from everything I've heard and what I've seen online, and I want to start with the tours. So just so that everybody understands, these are multi-day tours, and everybody's in a bus, and I guess they're they're maybe receiving presentations and getting to know the other stakeholders who are on the tour. Is that what's happening?
Right, and actually that's a big part of it too. We build in a lot of networking into our tours because, again, we have stakeholder groups from all over on each and every tour. So we want to make sure they're talking to each other and understanding each other's perspectives. So yes, these are essentially bus tours for 2 or 3 days typically, but we do try to get out on the water. For instance, when we go up to Shasta Dam, we actually take a houseboat ride on Shasta Lake. We try to go along, when we do the Lower Colorado River, we try to go either along the river or take a ride on one of the reservoirs there. So we do try to get people out on the water a bit, but they are essentially bus tours. And you have people talking at every stop, so at a dam or at wetlands, and sometimes we're walking through the wetlands or through a mountain meadow, and then we're having people talk about a specific project, whether it's a restoration project or what have you. And then on the bus itself, we have people talking on the bus. We have what we call resource speakers who will come for the entire time of our tour. And these are like just experts of the particular region. And they will fill in as we're driving through a certain area. They'll give context to what everybody's seeing. They'll answer questions. They'll key off of other speakers who are at a certain stop. So we're stopping along the way, say 5 or 6 stops during the day. And then we also have people speaking on the bus as well.
So you're actually structuring the tours with a balance of stakeholders. And do you see from the tours that there are relationships that get started between some of the stakeholders, or at least they get to know each other, start working together better? Do you see that kind of interaction?
Oh, absolutely, we see that. We see that with every program we do. But you're on the bus for 3 days with somebody. You're going to places that you wouldn't normally go to, and sometimes we're really out in the boondocks. And yes, they start to form relationships, and they do continue after. Oftentimes, they do continue after the tour. So that's a big part of what we are trying to do at the foundation is helping to create those relationships and people to understand other perspectives.
So I went on a tour several years ago here in Texas that was modeled after one of the tours or the type of tour that the Water Education Foundation does, and I suspect that maybe that they had some assistance from your organization, and it really was just terrific. And I was thinking, well, we're going to see this as a regular thing, and I'm sure you're going to see this in a lot of other states, but I don't think that's really happened. I sure would like to see someone else try it again here.
No, absolutely, and I have to add that I took my first Water Education Foundation tour when I was a journalist in Southern California, and I took the Lower Colorado River tour, and there was nothing like seeing something up close. There's absolutely nothing. I know a lot of attorneys, I say you're writing memos and things about structures you haven't even seen. There's nothing like putting eyes on the river, eyes on what's going on. There's just no substitute. So that's really why we do the water tours.
So let me ask you about Project WET. One thing that I find very encouraging, because I see this with my children, is that they're learning about water conservation and issues associated with water that when I was going through school, we didn't talk about that. We might talk about the hydrologic cycle for a day, or less than a day. But it seems like programs like WET, which I want you to tell me a little bit more about, are really having a big impact on the younger generations.
Oh, absolutely. And, depending on your age, you might have learned about recycling when you were a kid. And so now it's like, which I remember I did as a child. And it really helps when, the students come home and they talk to their parents about it as well, right? So that's kind of the idea behind Project WET. So Project WET, Water Education for Teachers, is actually a Montana-based organization. We're the California coordinator of Project WET. So, and I don't know that every state has a program, but we do it in California. And so, yeah, it's really important to, teach the kids when they're young, get them to understand what a watershed is, the hydrologic cycle, all that stuff is really important. And that's what they really focus on, and water science and conservation. And so we started the program here in the mid-1990s in California, and we have taught X amount of teachers. So we actually have these stats where we know we teach X amount of teachers per year, and then that impacts many more students that they're going to teach that year. So our stats are more than 5 million. We've reached more than 5 million students since the mid-1990s. So it's a great program.
So the Water Leaders Program, first of all, I love the idea of this, and it seems like this is a great example. I mean, the other two programs are as well, but this is maybe a more direct example of how your projects are integrated with other entities within California that you're working with, and I'm assuming that the mentors come from a range of organizations.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, they do. I mean, the mentors are, for instance, for this year, we have Carla Nemeth, who's the director of the Department of Water Resources. She's a mentor. We've had natural resource secretaries serve as mentors. We try to get top stakeholders or top policymakers to be mentors. We just had someone today come into the class because they're here today on Water Leaders Program, and we had someone from the California Public Utilities Commission come and speak to them about leadership, because she was appointed by the previous governor to be on a commissioner on the CPUC, and guess what? She's a graduate of our Water Leaders Program in the year 2000. So our Water Leaders Program has been going on since 1997, and so we have now more than 400 graduates, and it's a really exciting thing when they go out there and they meet other people who are in other water leader classes and graduates, and so it creates a real kind of a fraternity here in the California water world if you've graduated from our program.
So it sounds like it's also something that's a coveted thing by younger professionals.
Oh, it's definitely coveted. And, we're grateful to have the mentors because they volunteer their time to do a shadow day with the Water Leaders class member. And I would say one of the hardest things, most challenging things in my years is not just, it's collecting all of those, asking all those mentors to volunteer their time, but it's also pairing them up, mentor to mentee. And again, because you don't want to pair up, say, a farmer with a farmer. You want to pair up a farmer with an environmentalist, or you want to pair up, a lawyer with an engineer. You want just a different perspective, right? A planner with a scientist. Like, I really try. That's one of the things I really sought hard to do, is make sure they're learning a different perspective during their shadow day and seeing a different side of the water world than they're used to. So it's this year they came back with great stories of everything they got to do. Like, for instance, I paired up someone from the U.S. Bureau of Reclamation with, they're managing water here in California, and I paired him up with someone from the Central Valley Water Quality Control Board, who actually goes out and tests for water quality. So while he's focused in his job on water supply, his mentor is more water quality focused. So he kind of, they get a different perspective.
So clearly you're seeing that the programs, the foundation, are influencing, the community of water professionals within California. Do you also see evidence of that influence in changes in water policy or management practices in California?
I don't know that we can really draw that link or take credit for any of that, but I can say that I see a lot more projects and organizations working together on solving California's water issues because they are really tricky. One of the big things we're doing is here, especially just north of Sacramento, is reactivating floodplains, for instance. And we've got a major farm company that's involved, the Environmental Defense Fund that's involved. We've got all kinds of people who are involved in this effort and to try to also help the salmon in the river to survive. So we have a farming company who's doing all kinds of habitat projects in the river to try to help the small salmon, the young juvenile salmon to actually survive, and creating some habitat by dropping these walnut tree roots. They're anchored by large boulders, but they create habitat because the rivers are so altered. They're essentially a desert underneath, and there's not very many places for the salmon to hide. So we're seeing all kinds of projects where people are coming together to work to solve California's water problems, and it's really, really satisfying.
Well, let's talk about a couple of those major efforts on the state level. The first one I'd like to talk about is the Sustainable Groundwater Management Act. That's, I guess, a few years old now, and you're seeing implementation, and how's that going?
Well, it's we have our first big deadline coming up in January of the kind of critically overdrafted basins. They have to come up with their plan. California was really, California generally is at the forefront of environmental protections and that sort of thing. But when it came to groundwater, we were like the last in the West to come up with a Sustainable Groundwater Management Act, and that was of 2014. So it's been about 5 years. And so we are going to see what happens in January. In fact, the SIGMA, as we call it, that's the acronym SIGMA, we call it in California. We're going to be looking at that topic at our annual water summit in October because, and we're calling our summit the Year of Reckoning, in part because, 2020 is, we're going to have a lot of deadlines, and especially this big one with SIGMA. So we'll see how it's going. I hear it's going well in some parts of California, others maybe not so well, but we're going to find out soon enough.
So I've heard SIGMA described in some ways as kind of the opposite of what Texas has with desired future conditions, which really what you're saying is what you want your aquifer to. I mean, what a snapshot of what you want it to be like, whereas maybe SIGMA is what you don't want it to be like, what you want to avoid.
Right, exactly. No, that's a really good way to put it. I mean, it's groundwater is something that we rely on heavily when we go through a drought. So it's important for us to have our aquifers be sustainable. And so it became a really big issue, and still is a big issue. And now they're talking about managing, ground flood waters to recharge the aquifers. So there's a lot going on with the groundwater here.
So how has that work gone with the agricultural community, because they're such a major user of water in California?
Yeah, I mean, they're the ones, essentially, a lot of the critically overdrafted basins are in the San Joaquin Valley, which is essentially in between Bakersfield and Sacramento. They have a lot of work to do because of SIGMA. If they don't come up with their own plans, the State Water Resources Control Board will throw down the gavel. So there's a lot of incentive for them to come up with locally based plans on how to manage their groundwater.
So I remember reading that the drought that you came out of here recently was a major issue as far as groundwater, and that a lot of the aquifers were really depleted in some areas.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, because that's what happens when we don't have any natural surface water to tap. Everyone goes into the ground. Everyone looks downward, right? And so during the drought, there were just a lot of stories about people drilling even deeper wells because the water table was going down. So well drillers were very, very much very busy during that time.
Kind of a race to the bottom.
A race to the bottom, yeah, exactly. So
you also have the California Water Fix and the Eco Restore programs that Governor Brown was a big champion of, but you've now got a new governor, Newsom, and there's been some changes to those programs. So could you tell us about the Water Fix and Eco Restore, and then tell us about what's changed here recently?
Well, and Water Fix was the name that they gave it. We actually don't call it that at the foundation. But, however, Water Fix had to do with building tunnels under the Delta, the Sacramento, San Joaquin Delta. Those are the Sacramento River and the San Joaquin River come together to form our delta in California that is essentially between Sacramento, San Francisco, and Stockton. And so the way our water has flown through California is that it falls as rain or snow in Northern California, and it is transported through that delta. And there's just, how much time do you have? The delta is very complex. It's very complicated. There's a lot of emotion tied to the delta. It's a bunch of, it's islands. People farm there. They live there. And yet we send our water through there to get down to Southern California. So it's very much a hot spot in the California water world. And the former Governor Brown, wanted to build tunnels under the delta so that the water wasn't going through the delta. It was going to just go under the delta. And for a number of reasons. One, we've got a bunch of islands and levees in the delta that, if we had a big earthquake, they could collapse. And then the water from the ocean would come in and make that fresh water salty, and we can't send it down to Southern California for drinking purposes. And there's an endangered delta smelt and endangered salmon in the delta. And what happens is as the water from the Sacramento River goes through the delta, it has to be pumped up. And those pumps can chew up those little fish and kill them, and they are endangered. So that's a problem, right? So they thought that the tunnels might be able to circumvent some of those problems so that the water could continue going down to Southern California. And so when Newsom, our more recent governor, came into town, so to speak, he changed it from 2 tunnels to 1 tunnel. So, and he also directed, his focus is on preparing what they call a water resilience portfolio for California. So he's focused on water issues here. They're talking about 1 tunnel instead of 2. The 2 tunnels were controversial in some areas of California. Whether the 1 tunnel is going to pass muster with everyone, I don't know. I guess we'll have to find out. That nothing is done easily in California water, and it takes time to get these programs. This program sort of has to be restarted with the one tunnel, and we can we'll see where it goes from here.
So essentially, the issue is you've got a massive surface water interbasin transfer from Northern California to Southern California, and you're trying to mitigate impacts to the delta by tunneling underneath. And essentially,
yeah. Mm-hmm.
And one of the things I find interesting, kind of watching that unfold from here in Texas, is how you see and hear so much discussion by the governor, the leader of the state, about water, and you don't see that everywhere.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, I mean, you see it here in California because, one, we're a water's, we don't always have a lot of water. We are an agricultural powerhouse. We have large cities that depend on that water. So, and we have a lot of biodiversity of species that depend on that river, whether they're a fish or whether they're a bird, So we have everything coming at you from all directions when it comes to water in California. That's what kind of makes it interesting and more unique from other states.
So, speaking of other states, the Water Foundation does some work outside of California, I understand. So can you tell us a little bit about that?
Yeah, we do. We work a lot on the Colorado River, so to speak, in terms of we write articles for Western Water on the Colorado River. We do a 3-day tour of the Lower Colorado River, which essentially starts in Las Vegas and hits Hoover Dam and then goes down the river almost all the way to the border, swings up along the Salton Sea, goes through some of the agricultural lands that are served by the Colorado River. So we do that. And we have a beautiful, we just redid our Colorado River map, water map. And these are beautiful maps. They're also educational. And actually, when I was a journalist, I had the California water map by my desk. I always referred to it when I was reporting on water issues because it was a good visual of how water moves through the state, So the maps are really important. So, again, not to get off, but Colorado River. And then one of the biggest things we do is, and we're gearing up for this in September, is our biennial Colorado River Symposium in Santa Fe. Santa Fe is where the original negotiators of the 1922 compact on the Colorado River, they negotiated from the states and they did the original negotiations for the river and how to divvy it up and all that stuff in Santa Fe. So we have our biennial event there. It brings in people from all 7 states that depend on the Colorado River, so Wyoming, Colorado, Utah, Nevada, New Mexico, Arizona, and California. Plus, we can't forget Mexico. Because the river goes down, it's an international river. So we also have a lot of people from the tribes. There's a lot of tribes that live along the Colorado River. So we have a lot of tribes that come to our event. And this is a very high-level invitation-only event, again, where people come to discuss the issues and try to understand other perspectives. Again, that's the theme that goes through a lot of our events and everything that we do here. So that's a big event we have every 2 years, and we're about to go there next month.
So in Santa Fe in 1922, the plan for sharing water out of the Colorado was reached, but here more recently, there's been some new developments having to do with water sharing among the states and maybe Mexico. I don't know for sure. Is Mexico part of the agreement that's been worked out through the Department of Interior?
Yeah. So that's you're referring to the drought contingency plan, the DCP as they call it. There's a drought contingency plan for what we call the lower basin. That's the three states: Arizona, Nevada, and California. And then there's an upper basin drought contingency plan for Colorado, Utah, New Mexico, and Wyoming. So at our event 2 years ago, we actually had the latest agreement between the United States and Mexico signed at our event. It's called Minute 323, and that took into consideration all these plans are sort of weaved together. So because there's a lot of things you can't do without Mexico's help and vice versa. So all of these plans are considering Mexico and vice versa. So, and we'll be talking about that next month, actually, at our event.
So I want to wrap up with a question about how the West and California, all the Southwest, can best meet its future water needs. I'm sure you've given a lot of thought about that. Do you think that we're on the right track, or do you think that maybe there's some other things that we need to give more consideration?
Well, I think there's a lot of forward thinking in terms of, the Colorado River has been through a 20-year drought, is experiencing a 20-year drought. So, and I think everyone has really reached the conclusion or have accepted that, climate change is going to continue to threaten our water supply in the West, and we need to do something about it, right? So there's a lot of water recycling, ocean desalination. There's all these, you can't have all your eggs in one basket when it comes to water, right? You have to have an array of projects to make sure that we still have fresh water for everybody, and it seems like we're going on that track, and it depends on where you're located, on what kind of projects you're going to have, and all that kind of stuff. But I think people understand it. They understand what's going on, and the people who are managing and in charge of that, they're understanding the importance of what needs to be done.
So, Jen, I've really enjoyed our conversation today. Before we go, though, can you tell our listeners how they can find out more about the Water Education Foundation and all the things that you're doing?
Oh, sure. One of the easiest ways is just to go to watereducation.org. That's our website. And it's actually a really good resource just to do your own research. You can sign up for, under our quick links, we have sign up for announcements. And that's where we will tell you when the latest Western Water article is available, how to sign up for that, what kind of events we have coming up, and just everything that we're doing. So watereducation.org.
Great. Fantastic. Jen, thank you so much.
Oh, thank you, Todd. I really appreciated it and enjoyed our conversation.
This has been Talk+Water, the podcast associated with the Texas Water newsletter, which provides timely information on the spectrum of Texas water issues, including science, policy, and law. My guest today was Jen Bowles, who is the Executive Director of the Water Education Foundation based in Sacramento, California. Texas+Water is published jointly by the Meadow Center for Water and the Environment at Texas State University, the Texas Water Journal, and the Texas Water Resources Institute at Texas A&M University. You can sign up for Texas+Water by visiting texas+water.org/newsletter. My name is Todd Votteler. I'm the host of Texas+Water. Let's talk about water again soon. Thank you.